Gli 11 discepoli intanto andarono in Galilea, sul monte che Gesù aveva loro fissato. Quando lo videro, gli si prostrarono innanzi. Alcuni però dubitavano, e Gesù, avvicinatosi, disse loro: «Mi è stato dato ogni potere in cielo e in terra. Andate dunque e ammaestrate tutte le nazioni, battezzandole nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo, insegnando loro ad osservare tutto ciò che vi ho comandato. Ecco, io sono con voi tutti i giorni, fino fine del mondo». Preghiamo. Dio misericordioso ed eterno, dal quale tutto l'universo riceve l'energia, l'esistenza e la vita, noi crediamo che sei tu a guidare il corso della storia dell'uomo e che il tuo amore può cambiare in meglio il nostro destino. Aiutaci ad essere degni annunciatori del suo amore e libera il mondo intero dalla pandemia affinché possiamo ritornare sereni alle nostre consuete occupazioni e lodarti e ringraziarti con cuore rinnovato. Te lo chiediamo per Cristo nostro Signore. Amen. Maria, aiuto dei cristiani. Nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo. A very good afternoon to you all present here. History is a guide to navigation in perilous times. History is who we are, why we are, and the way we are. The Salesians of Don Bosco have been present in India since 1906, a period of 114 years. It is indisputable that the congregation has made a major contribution to the building up of the Indian Catholic Church. Commenting on the contribution of Monsignor Luis Mathias, Cardinal Valerian Gracias remarked that the Western missionary archbishop felt and acted not only in the interest of his own archdiocese and his beloved city and citizens of Madras, but in the wider interest of the Church in India and of the country as a whole. The following are the scope of the research: to contribute to the scholarly history of the Salesian congregation in India and of the leading missionaries and their impact, to establish the contribution of Monsignor Mathias to the local, national and universal church, to assess the relevance of the contribution of the Salesians to the Indian Catholic Church. The chosen topic, Monsignor Mathias' contribution to the Catholic Church with special reference to the formation of Indian Seminarians at the Sacred Heart Seminary, Poonamallee, is specific, but it has a wider significance for the contemporary religious history in general, in that India has become one of the fastest growing sources of vocations in the Catholic Church, while Europe and parts of the Americas struggle. This is one of the most important developments in modern church history. It is changing the whole center of gravity of the church. To understand how this happened, one needs a granular understanding of the Indianization of the Catholic Church in India, and in particular, of how it happened in the seminaries in India. The term Indianization is understood in this dissertation as the practice of promoting Indians as leaders in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church in India. The period chosen for this research is from 1935, the year when Monsignor Mathias began his mission as Archbishop of Madras, to 1965, the year he died. This period is a critical one in world history, as it was marked by the Second World War, the struggle for independence in India, the opposition to the entry of foreign missionaries into India, and the Second Vatican Council. A discussion on the effectiveness of the mission as Monsignor Mathias at the center. Could anything at all be achieved in the troubled transition period in which he found himself? The following 4 archives, among the 30 different archives consulted during this investigation, proved especially valuable. The Archivio Salesiano Centrale, the Salesian Provincial Archives, Madras, the Sacred Heart Seminary Archives, Madras, Archivium Secretum Vaticanum, Vatican. It is worth noting in passing that it was no easy thing to decipher the handwriting of Monsignor Mathias and also to comprehend the language, the typical style of Italian of the mid-20th century, different in many ways from modern usage. The research has also made use of the published sources consulted in at least 15 libraries. The method chosen for the research is chronological, thematic, narrative, analytical, and critical. The aim is to present new facts and interpretations in a clear and simple manner. Critical and analytical aspects are taken care of in the general conclusion, wherein there is a serious reflection made on the incidents reported and personnel involved in all the important tasks of the formation of Indian seminarians. The research, based primarily on the archival sources, presents the history of Christianity in India viewed as an integral part of Indian history. Limitations. At the outset, it is important to note that this research focuses on and limits itself to the contribution of Monsignor Mathias to the formation of Indian clergy at Sacred Heart Seminary, with special reference to the Salesians of Don Bosco who collaborated closely with them to run the seminary. But the research hypothesis, the contribution of Monsignor Mathias with a special reference to the formation of Indian seminarians, which resulted in the indigenization of the Catholic Church, demands the consideration of the historical analysis of the overall missionary activities of Monsignor Mathias. Hence, the chosen research is neither a biographical account of Monsignor Mathias nor the history of Sacred Heart Seminary, but it is concerned with the relation between the two, with the hope of stimulating more research on both. Due to the time limit of the study, it was not possible to compare and contrast the missionary activities of other religious congregations, especially with regard to the seminary formation, which could be considered as a theme for another research work. All the archival and published materials collected are not used due to the scope of the research. Summary of the research. This dissertation is divided into 2 parts with the general introduction and conclusion. The bibliography, the appendix, and the index of names and places help to enrich the reading of the thesis. The first part is divided into 3 chapters. The first chapter presents the historical background to the contribution of Monsignor Mathias. In the first place, the political situation of Tamil Nadu in the 20th century is presented. Secondly, a general understanding of the socio-economic and cultural background of Tamil Nadu helps one to know more about the people whom he served and to understand the relevance of his mission. Thirdly, it has been noted that the various Hindu religious rituals were combined with Catholic religious practices spontaneously. This syncretization directs attention to the uniqueness of the religious situation to the missionary activities of Monsignor Mathias. This is a theoretical issue that has to be addressed in India, as Christianity is considered to be a Western religion even today. The second chapter illustrates the transfer of the Madras mission to the Salesians of Don Bosco from the Millil missionaries because of Monsignor Mathias' reputation in India. It also recounts briefly the life and mission of Monsignor Mathias in Italy and Assam till his arrival in Madras for his enthronement as its Archbishop. The growth of the Salesian congregation in India under his leadership is an index of the implantation and the growth added to the Catholic Church in India. The establishment of North and South Indian Salesian provinces in 1934 and Shillong diocese in 1935 are part of this pattern. The love for Don Bosco and the support of his congregation had granted success in his mission on behalf of the Catholic Church. Monsignor Mathias had accepted in faith and obedience his sudden transfer to be the Archbishop of Madras as the will of God. The third chapter presents the contribution of Monsignor Mathias in his archdiocese from 1935 to 1965 in order to assess the relevance of the formation of the Indian seminarians at the Sacred Heart Seminary. Though the daring missionary knew the new mission field fairly well, it was through his initial strategical postal visits that Monsignor Mathias was able to identify the challenges that arose due to the lack of personnel, finance, and the socio-political context. For Monsignor Mathias, Madras was a city and its problems were totally unlike those faced by the tribal population in Northeast. His leadership as the Archbishop of Madras had to include the social, intellectual, and moral spheres. With his personal experience of the First World War, Monsignor Mathias had accomplished his clergy at the time of Second World War. He was fully sympathetic to the cause of a free India. The whole of the vast North Orkot district, the territory of the Madras Archdiocese, was very poor and consisted mostly of Dalit population. Monsignor Mathias did evince a keen interest in helping such marginalized sections of society, for which he made a number of visits to Europe and America. He had refuted what Mr. Gandhi had said in September 1935, that Christian missionaries should confine their activities to humanitarian services without the ulterior motive of converting in India. Could I have your attention on the screen just to have a glance at the handwriting of Monsignor Mathias? And I like to read maybe the fifth word onwards. No? Mi meraviglio non poco di trovare nell'argomentazione del signor Gandhi tanta poca logica. Infatti, egli ammette i grandi e ricchi missionari cristiani continuano nelle opere sociali e caritatevoli, ma che cessino il loro proselitismo. Il signor Gandhi accetta i frutti, ma non vuole saperne dell'albero. Dove la logica? So this is the handwriting of Monsignor Mathias, which I had to read and decipher. To continue our presentation, in the given situation, decent standard churches were built by Monsignor Mathias, and he never failed to promote Christian art. His rapport with the Secretariat of the Vatican State and the Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith is evident from the letters preserved in the Pontifical archives. In all this, he could be considered as an example and role model to the bishops of this time. Monsignor Mathias had been a prominent and forceful figure among the churchmen of the country and a tower of strength to the CBCI. On several noteworthy occasions, he expounded and defended the rights of freedom of religion and education with incisive logic, vigor, and candor. His pastoral letters and articles published in the New Leader commanded the attention of the thinking sections for all communities and won for him their respect and admiration. In 1938, he founded the Clergy Monthly that developed itself as an important journal of theological reflection now known as Vidya Jyoti, and admirably managed by the Jesuits from New Delhi. The contribution of Monsignor Mathias towards the unification of Madras and Mylapore dioceses had helped the Universal Church to resolve the problem of double jurisdiction that existed for several decades in the Indian Catholic Church. He also obliged to be the extraordinary apostolic visitor of Egypt and Eritrea in 1955. The mission of Monsignor Mathias that had culminated on the eve of Vatican II is remarkable. He articulated and explained to the Universal Church the challenges of the local church in India. The active participation of Monsignor Mathias at Vatican II instantiates one of today's major theological and pastoral issues of the Catholic Church, the relation between the Universal Church and the local church. However, his failure to learn Tamil, the language of his flock, was a considerable obstacle to be in direct contact with people and to have personal access to the riches of their language, culture, and art. This diminished his power to contribute to their language, art, and culture, and thus make the gospel relevant in a multi-religious context of Madras with a non-Catholic majority. The people of Tamil Nadu have been very appreciative and proud of their cultural heritage, and anyone who contributed towards furtherance has been honored, whatever their origin be. The following are the evidences for the honor rendered by Tamil people to those who had contributed for the promotion of their cultural heritage. The Jesuit missionaries Robert di Nobili is called Tattva Bodhaka. Constantine Joseph Beski as Veerama Muniva, Robert Colwell and G.U. Pope have been honored by the government of Tamil Nadu for their literary contribution with their statues erected in Madras. The introduction to the second part of the thesis focuses on the relevance of indigenization of the Catholic Church and the contribution of Monsignor Mathias to it. The fourth chapter discusses the decisive transitions that had taken place in favor of Indian vocations, the need that existed for a major seminary in the Archdiocese of Madras, and how Monsignor Mathias met the transition of the formation personnel from missionaries to Indians, and the role of Monsignor Mathias in guaranteeing the finance to run the seminary. The efforts of Monsignor Mathias to establish a major seminary were always accompanied by divine providence. He managed to change the mentality of his flock from the assumption that priests had to come from the West and to provide the right kind of formation for Indian seminarians. In the political and ecclesiastical context of India, Monsignor Mathias managed to recruit local vocations. Though initially the vocations were recruited only from Kerala, and the formation personnel, especially the first three Indian rectors, were also from Kerala. This aspect could be borne in mind of further research on transition of Indian to local formation personnel. However, the success of Monsignor Mathias as Archbishop of Madras Mylapore was Monsignor R. Arulappa, a local Tamil Telugu. The fifth chapter presents the integral growth of the seminary in the context of the agitation for India's independence, as well as the influence of independent India and the efforts of Monsignor Mathias to hand over the important task of forming the seminarians of the Archdiocese to his fellow Salesians in perpetuum. Through his regular updates from Vatican II, Monsignor Mathias had managed to connect his seminarians with the Second Vatican Council. The participation of the seminarians at the priestly ordination in the 38th International Eucharistic Congress, Bombay, shows the efforts of the seminary to teach the seminarians to be united with the universal church. The sixth chapter discusses Monsignor Mathias' specific orientations for the Sacred Heart Seminary. It is important to note that Monsignor Mathias insisted on pastoral orientation, especially by providing catechetical training to seminarians, which was the need of the hour for the evangelization of India. This focus of Monsignor Mathias necessitates presenting his intervention for Argentus, insisting on opera Sancti Pauli for the formation of lay catechists. The attention he gave to the formation of the Indian seminarians is very impressive. The source of inspiration that he had acquired for this important mission could be traced back to his formative years in Sicily. At the end of this presentation, a critical reflection on the following three aspects would be helpful to find the relevance of the study. Sacred Heart Seminary, a Salesian mission. Monsignor Mathias depended on his confreres, the Salesian missionaries, to run the seminary, even though he was criticized for the Salesian monopoly in the Archdiocese. The case of Father Joseph Danasamy brings out the critical outlook of the mission of Monsignor Mathias and his choice of the Salesians to run the seminary. It could be said that Father Joseph was a troublemaker, but it makes one wonder why Monsignor Mathias did not choose Indians who were with a doctorate and licentiate in the place of Salesians at the seminary. Monsignor Mathias was convinced that the Salesians would be the perfect choice to run the seminary and to form the seminarians, as he believed the Salesian system to be more effective. Due to this, the preference of Monsignor Mathias was always for the Western missionaries. And it is very evident in the appointment of the first three rectors of the seminary, Monsignor Mora, Father Mauri, and Father Valloja. It cannot be denied that there were also Indians among the staff members of the seminary. The rectors had to rely on Monsignor Mathias for every decision, even for the day-to-day affairs of the seminary. It could also be said that the support of Monsignor Mathias to the rectors was exceptionally enhanced by the importance that he had for his seminarians. Though the formation offered by the Western missionaries to the Indian seminarians had borne much fruit, The attitude of missionaries about India, like that of Monsignor Mathias, could be attributed to the Orientalism, a Western style of dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. The study of the collaboration between the Archbishop and the rectors has helped to bring to light the unrecognized toil of Monsignor Mathias' co-missionaries. At this juncture, it is also just to point out that many Salesian missionaries who had gone to work in the Archdiocese of Madras Mylapore had gone back to Europe due to the lack of understanding on the part of Monsignor Mathias. A vivid example is the infamous case of Monsignor Joseph Carreño. This research also reveals the disagreement that Monsignor Mathias had with Monsignor Mora, the first Vicar General and the rector of the seminary. A formation envisaged for post-Vatican II. The seminary that had been established in the pre-Vatican II period had formed the Indian seminarians who would be in the pastoral field in the post-Vatican II era. Monsignor Mathias had never compromised on the quality of the candidates recruited for the seminary formation, in spite of the urgent need that existed for a greater number of priests. He was prophetic in accepting the candidates irrespective of their caste, in a caste-biased society. The formation that had been offered to the Indian seminarians at the seminary reveals that the specific orientations of Monsignor Mathias were already as laid down by Optatum Totius. Monsignor Mathias had aimed at a holistic human formation of the seminarians, characterized especially by the formatus accompaniment with the family spirit. Optatum Totius 4-7. Dami hi animas cetra tole, give me souls and take away the rest. The motto of Don Bosco that was based on three devotions, the Eucharist, the Blessed Virgin, and the Holy Father, had been instilled in the seminarians for their spiritual formation with greater care through spiritual direction. Optatum Totius, number 8-11. The orientation from the CBCI was well adapted by the seminary to provide a contextualized philosophical and theological formation. Optatum Totius 13-18. A detailed study on this aspect was not possible as the archives at Sacred Heart Seminary does not contain the kind of documentation that would cast light on it. Monsignor Mathias advised the seminarians, I urge you to keep abreast of all that is termed progress in the field of social science. Yet, do not forget that the first of all social codes is the gospel. Keeping in mind the multi-religious context of India, the mission-oriented pastoral and catechetical formation was given to the seminarians, Optatum Totius 19 and 20. The method of evangelization. Monsignor Mathias had adopted the method of forming Indians to evangelize their own people by catering to their spiritual needs. In the formation of lay catechists, Argentus number 17, he had insisted on maintaining the quality of evangelization and the need to support the burden of the priests in their mission. To meet this need, he established St. Paul's Catechist Training Center, SPCTC, as a supplement to the seminary. The St. Paul's Bible Institute, which grew out of SPCTC, would not have been closed down in 2015 if the vision of the founder was considered in spite of the challenges that had existed. The method of evangelization envisaged by Monsignor Mathias is relevant even in the present context, when the Catholic Church insists on the active participation of the laity in the life and mission of the Church. Conclusion. This study has shown how much the mission of Monsignor Mathias did to turn into reality Pope Leo XIII's vision of a Catholic Church in India run by the Indian clergy. The Sacred Heart Seminary, Poonamallee, has so far formed 1,710 priests and contributed 21 bishops to the Church. The role of the Salesians under the leadership of Monsignor Mathias had paved the way for a significant contribution. You can see, it's not clearly seen, the words that are written there in the slab. In gratitude to the Salesians for their tremendous service, sacrificial service for the past 62 years. It's written next to the statue of Don Bosco. The seminary continued to be under the administration of the Salesians after the death of Monsignor Mathias until 31st March 1998. At that time, the Salesians handed over the administration of the seminary to the Archdiocese of Madras-Mylapore after 62 years of their exemplary service, while continuing its support with formation personnel. Finally, the research study has presented the capillary processes beneath the surface of a crucial transformation of Indian Catholicism, from a missionary clergy to an Indian clergy, with more vocation than anywhere in Europe. Today, parts of the Americas and most of the European countries which once sent missionaries to India, in turn get their priests from India. To understand this reversal of trend, one of the most important developments in modern church history, this historical study effectively reveals how it had happened in the seminaries. As you see the letter that is projected on the screen, there are many letters bear witness that Monsignor Mathias had a very cordial relationship with the seminarians. He would address them, "My dear seminarians." I like to call your attention on the last but one line. "Keep Jesus in your heart and you will be his priest." That was his advice always given to the seminarians. Thank you.
So now we turn to the moderator of the thesis, Father Filippo Lovison Barnabite, who will give an evaluation of his judgment of the thesis and the strengths and weaknesses, and open the discussion with the candidate.
Grazie Presidente. In questo solenne atto accademico, buonasera a tutti, Hendry festeggia oggi il suo 39esimo compleanno e anche il suo onomastico, che ha avuto un giorno davvero speciale.
Grazie.
Ci troviamo però davanti a un tema di studio molto complesso per tante ragioni. Primo perché riguarda un aspetto della presenza, lunga presenza degli ordini salesiani in India, un paese immenso che si estende dall'Himalaya all'Oceano Indiano. E poi perché si affronta un tema sempre molto interessante ma molto complesso, meglio controverso da secoli, quello della formazione, che fa tremare un po' le vene a tutti. In questo caso specifico dei seminaristi indiani presso il seminario del Sacro Cuore in Tamil Nadu. E poi anche per il periodo scelto, 1935 al 1965, anno in cui termina il Concilio Vaticano II, e non sappiamo poi cosa è successo dal punto di vista della vita religiosa dopo il Concilio. E lo fa attraverso l'opera dell'arcivescovo di Madras, Monsignor Mathias, che proprio in quell'anno muore. Quindi non ha visto il dopo. E fa intravedere l'esperienza acquisita sul campo e anche i frutti dell'apostolato che hanno portato a molte sante vocazioni di carico che abbiamo ascoltato. Allora le chiedo già fin d'ora, nel suo studio ha per caso dato importanza e interesse al lato opposto della medaglia, cioè quello delle dimissioni, ad esempio, nell'ambito della formazione, oppure a quello anche delle uscite volontarie nell'ambito della formazione dei studenti, in quel periodo che lei ha studiato?
Sì. The Second Vatican Council, as all of us know, it is a historical event of Storico. There was a lot of update that had been taken in the Catholic Church, and in general, we know that many congregations lost their members, and coming to the Salesian congregation to which Monsignor Mathias belongs, and to which he was very proud of being a member, we could say that after the death of Don Bosco, congregation was growing well, sending missionaries in great numbers. As Father Moran within his book, The Don Bosco ai Nostri Giorni, presents a statistical report of the growth of the congregation by way of statistics. the number of confreres in the congregation. In the First and Second World War, there was some kind of lack of vocations of leaving, uncertainty, stability. But after the Second World War, the congregation revived. And there were up to 15,000 confreres in the year 1950. And it gradually grew. And in 1965, we could say there were more than 20,000 confreres. No? And I remember attending a conference in Pisana, the previous January it was. There was a conference, historical convenio, in which the rector was saying the topic of the convenio was the charism of Salesian congregation after Second Vatican II. And in a very sad tone, he was saying, we have lost many confreres after the Second Vatican Council. And he never mentioned, I remember that very well. And looking into, and also he didn't mention that it is because of the Second Vatican Council. That also has to be kept in mind. And looking into the book of statistical report of Moranbeth in his book, there are a number of confreres, an average of about 2,000 after Second Vatican Council, members leaving. And at present, 3 months back, the people are here from generally they will be updated as of today. But 3 months back, I remember when I was trying to conclude my thesis, I came to know that there were about 14,400 and plus Salesians working in 132 countries. So this is of little. Thank you.
In questi anni ho avuto modo di conoscere bene e apprezzare il dottorando a Hendry, salesiano di origine indiana, tra Nadu. Aveva già preparato con me la sua tesi di licenza in storia della Chiesa, sempre sull'area di studi della terra di origine, sul tema Historical Study and Culturation of Robert Dominic, presentato nell'anno accademico 2015-2016. Subito dopo, come ricorderanno, comunicava nel giugno del 2016 di aver ricavato delle suggestioni circa un possibile argomento di dottorato e vi ha lavorato per quasi un anno, presentandomi poi a maggio 2017 un primo schema completo della proposta e depositando il titolo, comprensibilmente più semplificato, il 16 maggio 2017 per esattezza. Dunque si tratta di un percorso di ricerca ponderato, maturato nel tempo e che il dottorando ha voluto presentare oggi in un contesto inimmaginabile allora, nel mezzo della pandemia, per la quale poi abbiamo anche pregato, rispettando i termini e i tempi previsti per la conclusione del terzo ciclo, quindi complimenti per questo sforzo coronato da questa giornata. Un percorso di cui abbiamo ripercorso le linee principali attraverso anche queste numerose slide che abbiamo visto durante la presentazione, per renderla più incisiva. Perché a dire la verità, come spesso sta avvenendo nelle discussioni di dottorato qui in Gregoriana, gli studenti tendono a seguire troppo rigidamente lo schema del progetto di ricerca iniziale, a volte lo ripetono. Ecco allora che al termine dei suoi studi in questa nostra facoltà di storia e beni culturali della Chiesa, ecco il chiedore di fare proprio uno sforzo di sintesi, ma anche di ragionamento storico sulle sudate carte, perché lei ne ha esaminato tante di carte che ha consultato in questi anni. E le faccio dunque questa domanda, questo brevissimo percorso a ritroso, un piccolo bilancio, no? Lei ha parlato delle conclusioni adesso, ecco, queste conclusioni appena presentate rispecchiano e fino a che punto rispecchiano lo scopo iniziale della sua ricerca?
Thanks for remembering the past these years. After speaking to you in 2016, I started looking for a topic and I wanted to do on Monsignor Luis Mathias. That would be a contribution to the congregation and also to the Catholic Church, to the local church, Madras Mylapore. And I was initially very much enthused, with lots of enthusiasm. I wanted to bring out his contribution, and by studying from his birth till his death, 1887 to 1965, and first consulted Archivio Salesiano Centrale. Then during the semester break, I had gone to Chennai for a month, and
looking into the different archives of Madras, Mylapore, and Chennai archives, provincial archives, and the Sacred Heart Seminary archives. And I found lots of materials, and it was huge. And I said, okay, I have enough materials, and I was confident to begin my research. And after returning, I spent more time in Archivio Secretum Vaticanum, different archival sections there, like Cancelleria Apostolica, Archivio Nunciatura India. There are 2 parts in that, and going into L'Osservatore Romano archives. And these archives further led me to precise my study, to hint on this formation. And my study, especially in Vatican archives, revealed me that the whole church was preoccupied how to hand over the leadership in the Indian Catholic Church to the Indians. And the prophetic vision of Pope Leo XIII was studied very well, and that also revealed me the political context in which missionaries were actually working. And that led me to India Office Records in London to see what was the diplomatic relationship that was existing in Vatican, and how the bishops were guided, especially because missionaries were not able to enter. That forced them to look for Indian vocations and to enable them, empower them, and hand over the leadership. So, having done this, but I had a disturbance. Can it be a historical study by itself? So, I approached Father Mark Lewis, if he remembers, one afternoon, just in the morning, and gave me an appointment in the afternoon, and we spent 2 hours. And then I was saying, because he had done a study on social impact of Jesuits College in Naples, so I thought I can get some guidance, and side by side talking with the professor Luis on my guide, and I decided, after having gone through the materials, that I can do this topic, contribution of Mathias to the formation of Indian seminaries, because it has a reason, it has a relevance. And when I spoke to you, you encouraged me, and you said, but you should publish, make use of the material that you have collected for other studies. I am very happy, and thank you for your patience. And this is the little evolution of the chosen topic. But the scope remains the same. Though I started with and reduced, precise my study, the scope remained the same, to contribute to the scholarly history of the Salesian congregation that I quoted before the scope, and to assess and to establish the contribution of Mathias to national, local, and universal church, and to find the relevance of his mission, which is the mission of the congregation to the church in India. So I think, though I made a precision in my study, the scope remained the same. Thank you.
Ricordo che ho accolto volentieri il suo invito a essere da moderatore, anche per la stima che nutro verso suo ordine religioso di appartenenza, perché il suo ordine ha avuto non pochi rapporti anche con noi barnabiti, almeno nella storia di ieri, soprattutto il tema dell'educazione che ci unisce. E come lei ben sa, San Giovanni Bosco si recò a suo tempo a Monza, presso la chiesa dei Barnabiti del Carrobbiolo, per ben 2 volte, per incontrare un barnabita d'eccezione che aveva iniziato a ragionare i ragazzi per educarli alla preghiera e al sano divertimento. Era il padre Redolfi, che operò molto a Monza, fondò uno dei suoi oratori nel 1844. Poi lei ha ricordato anche nella sua dissertazione il cosiddetto metodo preventivo, di cui cita diversi autori in una corposa bibliografia riportata da pagina 381 a pagina 428. E questo metodo preventivo, prima ancora che da Don Bosco, era già attuato dalla pedagogia barnabitica e anche dallo stile educativo dei barnabiti. Ecco allora che 3 sembrano le caratteristiche della pedagogia barnabitica: rigorosità nell'aspetto accademico, affettuosa disciplina e il metodo appunto preventivo. Impiegata dai barnabiti prima che la genialità pedagogica di San Giovanni Bosco ne facesse l'asse portante della sua proposta formativa. Ecco, nel suo studio ha incontrato delle assonanze, delle vicinanze, non solamente con i barnabiti, ma anche con altri ordini inerenti attenti all'educazione, alla formazione, oppure ne ha sentito l'esigenza, no? Proprio perché nessuno è un'isola a parte, no? Un pochino sono collegati e interdipendenti. Ecco, questa poeticità, ricchezza della vita consacrata ha avvertito l'importanza delle connessioni anche con altri ordini religiosi dal punto di vista proprio del metodo educativo.
The Salesian preventive system. Don Bosco, we know that Don Bosco had made use of this Salesian preventive system to educate his young people. And there are a number of research that have been carried out in the Salesian Institute, in Salesian Pontifical University, and a number of convenium by Istituto Storico Salesiano. The one aspect they all reveal is that Don Bosco was not original in his method. No? He was very alert. He was informing himself about what was going around him. And as it is pointed out that Barnabites, he went to meet them and learn. No? And there is also another example, the famous example of the social oratories that was very successfully run by Don Bosco, and which is very relevant even today in this context that had been imbibed from Filippo Neri. No, Don Bosco was adapting and getting to give the best for his boys. And I see this character of Don Bosco also in Monsignor Mathias. I could quote few examples, like especially when we speak of Salesian mission and all that. And he used to make many visits to abroad and Europe and America to raise funds, and he would visit the seminaries and he would see there, like what are the methods they are using, how they are educating them, and he would go and teach the rector and the staff. And he would also, I also had, as the limitation was like, it was not possible to compare other seminaries, but there are passing mentions that had been done in the thesis that he would write to the rector, look at St. Paul's, Tiruchirappalli, or the Papal Seminary in Pune, or St. Peter's Seminary in Bangalore, run by the MEPs. And he was always getting the ideas and passing on. And to go further, he was also very much interested in passing on also the literature that was available to him, written by different people. And certainly we can say that Don Bosco, as he had this characteristic of imbibing things for the good of his boys, Monsignor Mathias also was doing the same for his seminary. So this is my answer.
Se permette entriamo un pochino più nel cuore della sua dissertazione, le pongo alcune tematiche, poi altre svilupperà certamente il censore, questo non passa. Ci troviamo in un arco temporale del secolo scorso, 35-65, particolarmente significativo non solo per i cambiamenti avvenuti nella Chiesa Cattolica Universale, che arrivano fino alla conclusione del Concilio Vaticano II, ma per i grandi cambiamenti avvenuti nella Chiesa indiana. Grazie al seminario, anche il seminario di Sacro Cuore, dal quale sono partiti i missionari per la evangelizzazione in ogni angolo poi di tutto il mondo. Come esattamente nell'età contemporanea il termine di evangelizzazione, di cui lei usa costantemente, è divenuto abbastanza generico oggi, al punto da evocare l'insieme delle attività della Chiesa e in campo cattolico come protestante ha preso il posto di missione, termine questo usato fino al XIX secolo. Il metodista John Mott nel 1900 scriveva The Evangelization of the World in this Generation, mentre in ambito cattolico si imporrà con il decreto Recentes numero 21, e poi Propaganda Fide nel 1967 prenderà il nome di Congregazione per la Evangelizzazione dei popoli. Quindi c'è tutta un'evoluzione successiva. Il periodo è studiato dal 35-65 e dunque di passaggio verso un non ancora, che non conosce neppure il termine di inculturazione, che appare solamente nel 1975 nel vocabolario della Chiesa Cattolica e solo nel 1977 nei testi ufficiali della Chiesa stessa. Lei ne ha già parlato nella sua presentazione, però potete spiegare ancora meglio, in profondità, come è declinato dunque questo termine evangelizzazione di Monsignor Mathias, di cui parla a pagina 345 della dissertazione, proprio alla luce della specificità della formazione dei seminaristi indiani.
Okay, the idea of whole thing is about evangelization. The term, why did I use when it was not available in the time of the missionary activities of Monsignor Mathias? As Father Filippo has presented the evolution of this term, I was also thinking about it. Can I use, should I use, or should I put it as a mission? Then I decided to go for the use of the term evangelization, because from my previous experience of writing the thesis for license on the inculturation of Robert de Nobili, the manuscripts that I had a chance to see them in RC, and also during this thesis to re-see them. This missionary, the great missionary Robert de Nobili, mentions method of adaptation, which is now known as inculturation, and the studies that had been carried out by Father Rajamanikam, Saulier, and the responsio by Father Anjukandam in his book, they don't use anymore the term that was used by Robert de Nobili. They call it as inculturation. And Father Rajamanikam says in his introductory part in his book, The Oriental Scholar, the reason, it was very interesting. Though I should use only the method of adaptation, here I prefer to inculturation because I am in the post-Vatican II era, the term that had been accepted by the Catholic Church that has evolved. So, this also enables the reader to understand immediately, to grasp the meaning and the spirit of the because when they read from their context, so it will be easy for them to understand. So I decided, basing on these readings and experience that I had, I chose to use this evangelization. And though this term was officially accepted as pointed out in 1977, I remember seeing the term evangelization being used also for mission in the papers of Sicily Provincial Archives, which was preparing many people and send them, they prepare them from the school, pass them to novitiate and prepare them, ordain them or send them as aspirants. There they were encouraging those aspirants, you are evangelizzatori, you are evangelizers, you are announcers of the gospel. So I see that the term, though it is not officially accepted by the Catholic Church, the term was already in use. And I can also say that I found this word in the reports of CBCA documents. I consulted, I was fortunate to consult the CBCA documents that are preserved in St. Peter's Library, Bangalore, from 1945 to 1965, the period of my study. There also I found, I can give you also the years, like the Standing Committee report of 1952, and when there was a strong socio-political context of India against missionaries and this evangelization, the CBCI will come out with a prayer that had been prayed in the churches in 1957 in the churches, saying that prayer for evangelization of India. And though this term now, if I had to write maybe after 10 years, now I may have to use the term new evangelization that has been passed on, mission evangelization, and the theme that and the term that is used as of now is new evangelization. So I chose to use the word evangelization, but the spirit of the term is still of the mission. It's one and the same. It is simultaneously used. That's okay.
Faccio una piccola osservazione, mi scusi se la propongo questa sera, però credo importante anche per il cammino di ricerca che ognuno fa, proprio dal punto di vista documentare. Hendry a un certo punto si è trovato davanti a diversi documenti e so che mi aveva chiesto la presentazione per chiedere appunto una borsa di studio presso l'Istituto San Luigi dei Francesi qui a Roma per le classi a Parigi in Francia a studiare appunto la lingua francese. Questo è molto bello, la conoscenza di una lingua con gli tantissimi locali, no? Apre un mondo, no? Un mondo completamente nuovo. Però purtroppo la richiesta, la domanda non è stata accettata dato l'alto numero di richieste appunto di quell'anno. Ecco, allora le chiedo quanto ha influito questa mancanza di opportunità in questo curriculum, no? Lei ci ha provato, no? Però quanto ha influito la poca possibilità di conoscenza della lingua francese, in questo caso nella stesura della sua dissertazione, dove cita di alcuni testi francesi.
Yeah, that was interesting. His professor, this whole incident that had happened during this year. Yeah, I had applied for a scholarship in Istituto, San Luigi here near Pantheon. In the hope of getting the scholarship, I had done a course here in Rome with them for a month, going 3 times in a week. Because I had come across the letters of Monsignor Mathias. So that gives me a chance to say that he was born of French parents, but grew up till the age of 12 in Tunis. And when the parents died, he moves on to Sicily under the care of Salesians after getting the desire to become a Salesian. So he was occasionally writing letters to his sister who was a Salesian sister, FMA. And he also had a very good relation with the people of Alsace. He was writing letters. The letters were, in particular, he had a very good benefactor called Mr. Pellion, whose son is a friend of Father Moranvith in Hoops, Salesian University. So he was very kind enough to collect from Mr. Pellion's archives to his son and give me the letters I was going through. And with the help of the course that I had done here in Rome, it was very useful to guess more or less and understand, you know. And if that Borsa di Studio was given, I would have profounded my French. But with the help of English, knowledge in English and Italian, I was able to more or less guess. And if chance is given in future, if I think I'd love to profound also this language, to read and understand by myself all the letters on the French books that are of Salesian spirituality, pedagogy, that are written in French in origin.
Ritornando adesso agli archivi, in questi anni romani ha dedicato molto tempo, molta ricerca a tappeto negli archivi soprattutto domestici, come anche pontifici, anche di varie congregazioni. Padente però non ha tralasciato naturalmente gli archivi in India, li visitava con continui viaggi dall'Italia, praticamente fino a quando lo scoppio della pandemia lo ha reso possibile. Tra gli archivi da lei frequentati, una trentina, tanti, cito l'archivio salesiano centrale, l'archivio di propaganda fide, l'archivio segreto vaticano, l'archivio dell'annunziatura India, della segreteria di Stato, della cancelleria apostolica e tanti altri. O ci allarga tra gli ultimi quello dell'India Office Record di Londra e di Rovagno, e tra quelli in India l'archivio provinciale dei Salesiani di Madras e l'archivio arcivescovile di Madras, l'archivio di Stato di Chennai e anche altri. Ecco, la mia domanda è questa: lei è di origine indiana, proprio viene da quella terra, no? Questa preponderanza di fonti occidentali, che è normale perché la studiato qui, ha fatto riferimento agli archivi presenti soprattutto nell'area romana, possono, secondo lei, nella sua dissertazione, dare l'idea o l'impressione di avere scritto una storia, una concezione ocentrica e quindi incompleta o problematica proprio per lei che è nativo di quel paese?
So, Eurocentric approach, I understand that term. So that consulting only the archives in Europe, can it lead to a Eurocentric history? It's a very interesting question. Before answering this, I'd like to share, a few of the very strong lessons that are being instilled in me in Gregorian. Professors always used to say, different professors, la storia è per il domani. Un storio deve essere critico. The Professor Lewison used to say in his lessons, noi siamo qua non per giudicare, per studiare, comprendere e vivere bene in futuro anche in presente. No? And another professor used to say repeatedly la storia è la medicina per la memoria. Also the different philosophies, subjectivism, the Lonergan, Hegel, Heidegger, and these philosophers, they also speak of the history to be objective truth. If not objective truth, at least the maximum truth possible. So one of the reasons that I also visited many of the archives is to look for this truth, to present Monsignor Mathias' activities in an objective manner. For example, when I went to that you said that Louvain archives, I had an appointment with Professor Peter Demey, who teaches in Catholic University there. And he taught me you're an Indian, you're doing on a Western missionary bishop who worked in India, and what is your attitude going to be? He was teaching me if I was like you, I would immediately think, did the Universal Church hear the cry or the challenges, the problems of the local church? Going to the archives and meeting somebody there, and they are supporting the Orient. And also looking here in Vatican archives, the materials, you see about the games the people played, the entertainment they had, the culture they had, the political struggle they had, the various religious problems. It's a library or encyclopedia by itself that gives the overall perspective. So in answering this question, Eurocentric, I would say, if a study is done basing on the archives that are in Europe, can be Eurocentric. If the researcher does not take a neutral position, if he fails to be honest, sincere in presenting the historical truth, that would be my answer.
Ecco, io termino qui, Valente è ben consapevole dei limiti del suo studio, che lo dovrà approfondire come nel futuro, e sono una piena maturità storica, l'implitamento anche delle ricerche potranno debitamente risolvere. Ne porto i miei complimenti per questo suo contributo alla ricerca a beneficio della storia delle chiese indiane, anche del suo ordine salesiano, ma anche per una storia dell'educazione dei seminari. Grazie.
And now, because the defense is not simply between the director and the writer, but it's for community scholars, we have representatives of community scholars, the second year censor, to again give his opinion on the thesis and also to make critical comments and ask the more pointed questions. And this task we have the help of Father Debbio Mendoza, Jesuit, who will now give his
Thank you, Father Mark Luis. You can follow this. I will be reading this. Good afternoon to you all. I think Father Dominic, today, congratulations. First of all, it is your birthday today.
Yes.
So happy birthday. I suppose you are going to celebrate after this defense. And of course, this, as you have heard so often during the defenses, the defense is just the beginning of another academic phase. It's not the end of the story. And I'm taking from where Professor Robinson had started, before I begin to make to offer you my observations. First of all, this is, I must say, Father Dominic, this is a conversation between peoples. Only at this time I am on the driving seat. And you mentioned at the beginning, before that, today there are about 14,000 Salesians in the world. And how many in India?
About 2,800. You can ask that each.
Okay, 2,000 more or less. And the Salesians came to India in 1906.
Yes.
And when did the congregation accept the first Indian?
It was in, let's say, already in 1909 in Tanjore they were aspirants.
When?
1909. 1909. They were aspirants.
3 years.
Yeah, after that. And
after the arrival.
yeah, but the formation was not held there. They were sent to Portugal, and one dies there, one becomes priest, and he returns.
So only 3 years after the arrival in India, the Salesians took some Indians
Exactly.
to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have done pretty fast indigenization, about which you are discussing in relation to Archbishop Luis Mathias. 3 years only for the Salesians to do indigenization, whereas the Jesuits took 300 years to accept.
These occasions were fruit of the Jesuit missions. It was in Tanjore.
Okay,
So
but
it
3
was
years.
So
we took 300 years.
the credit doesn't go only to the Salesians, also to the Jesuits who had prepared the soil.
Okay,
Yes.
there were not Salesian vocations, but Jesuit vocations.
And they were identified by Salesians. Yes.
Okay, now let us begin. As I said, please keep in mind that this is a conversation. We are going to converse, but you will be responding. My observations. The candidate's effort to write about the initiatives of the Salesians in India is certainly commendable, praiseworthy. The work on the inception of the Salesians in South India, in particular, and the development of the Sacred Heart Seminary SHS is a straightforward story, meaning more descriptive rather than critical and interpretative. The facts are presented in a clear and simple manner, but on the whole, the narrative is conservative rather than post-colonial. That is, voices and thoughts of the professors and of the seminarians are absent. I suppose the professors who were teaching there and the seminarians were not deaf and dumb, no? But I find an absence of the voice of the professors and of the seminarians. You can deny or you can explain this. Since, because you are talking about the seminary is not only the rectors, not only the archbishop, it's only the professors as well as the students. Since the thesis, only the voices of the archbishop, Luis Mathias, and of his appointees are audible, who happen to be all Italians. Since the thesis covered both the colonial and post-colonial times, of course independence of India was in 1947, and the thesis goes up to the 65, one would expect to see this transition or some dramatic changes in the seminary program. The thesis explains that the foreign clergy sensed that with the independence their time was up, but they were also reluctant to share power or responsibility. The dissertation offers much information about the church in India, but raises many questions on the formation of the clergy or of the seminarians. Minor details could be omitted, which made the narrative, the stories pretty long. There are many quotations in Italian. They could have been in English. Why did you write many quotations in Italian? When the bishop speaks, Archbishop speaks in Italian. When the rectors speak, of course they were all Italians, you put quotations in Italian.
Can I
what was the reason?
Can I? Okay. So,
briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. So I had synthesized what it would be like in that paragraph that I cited. So after synthesizing, paraphrasing what would be, I wanted to give the reader, since it's going to be a doctoral dissertation in the Pontifical University, so I thought it is more apt to give Sorry? It's going to be the doctoral dissertation in the Pontifical University. I thought it would be good to give the original words to understand the real meaning of the archbishop or the missionary or the seminarian, whoever writes. Of course, no seminarian had written in Italian, but the missionaries and the archbishop or the Pope's letter, some places in Latin. So I thought, without distorting the meaning that is expressed. So, and I already had planned with Professor Filippo also, when I publish it as a book, and all those Italian texts would be translated into English. So that was good.
Father Dominic, it's very difficult to accept this argument that when you translate, you distort completely, because many other passages, many other ideas and thoughts, you have translated into English. So therefore to say, because I thought you are going to publish this in English, so you have to, it has to be in English, but anyway, that's
I will do when I publish.
It's a minor point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but, okay, minor details could have been omitted. There are, the bibliography is impressive. Now the issues we could discuss here, each one of them are really can be discussed at length, but that is not the purpose here. My purpose is just to point out to you certain things, because we profess that at another level, so therefore we have certain experience. The experience that I have, post-colonial studies, I would like to communicate with you. You know about this, but sometimes you are not aware of this. You have made use of two important concepts to understand Monsignor Luis Mathias SDB. As you have already spoken here, these two concepts. And the seminary formation in this archdiocese. You spoke about two concepts. And these concepts or terms are indigenization and enculturation. Right? You have already mentioned about what you understand by indigenization and enculturation. And instead to understand enculturation, which is a concept that we are using today, we need to understand what culture is. No doubt, so far, so good. Firstly, I find that your understanding of indigenization of the Catholic Church is very narrow. Indigenization, this is your quotation, indigenization is understood as the practice of promoting Indians as leaders in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church in India. End of your quotation. This understanding is rather, I feel, colonial, clerical, and preconciliar. It excludes the faithful. Of course, I don't expect in any way you to have my thoughts or you to write whatever I did. This is your thesis, but I'm only saying that you started with that definition, this definition of indigenization, to describe what Monsignor Mathias was trying to do. But we know that there are different definitions, descriptions of what indigenization is. You always said, wrote here, that Mathias was for indigenization, and that indigenization meant recruiting local vocations, Indian vocations. The question that I say that this idea of indigenization is rather, colonial, is because you have also, you mentioned about that Father Joseph, right? Father Joseph, as it is mentioned in the thesis, he was from Kerala. He was writing anonymous letters, very strong letters to the Archbishop Mathias, asking him, why are you appointing, even up to 1965, after the independence, why are you appointing foreign rectors and giving important posts to foreigners when there are competent Indians, right? You have Father Joseph. You have Gandhi saying that, telling Mathias, you have to respect Indian religious, Indian values. Now, and you have the definition of that Father Dominic gives about Indianization, that the Archbishop was following, recruiting Indians for the seminaries, certainly from the high caste, right?
No.
The Indians?
No.
Okay, from all castes.
Yes.
So now, which of these three, Gandhi, Joseph, and the bishop, which idea is more complete or whatever about Indianization? When Joseph, Father Joseph, was writing anonymous letters, I think that was his problem, his difficulty. He was demanding the appointment of Indians. The thesis says that they said that this Father Joseph was interested in the post of the rector. He was ambitious. But when Father Mathias or Bishop Mathias appoints, foreign missionaries, Salesians, nothing is being said about his appointments.
Can I intervene, Father?
Okay, you can put all together.
Okay, Father, yes.
You can put in the context.
Okay.
Okay? All right. And again, inculturation, culture, it's very, just a few more points, and then you have all the time. Culture would be defined as, again, your words here, a historically transmitted pattern of meaning, embodied in symbols, a system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms, by means of which men communicate, perpetuate, and develop their knowledge about attitudes towards life. To me, this understanding is outdated. Culture needs to be understood as discourses or knowledge that empowers groups. Which group is a particular culture empowering? One may wonder whether the cultural and religious assumptions of the SDB missionaries who were engaged in the formation of the Indian missionaries at the SHS were not being challenged by the struggle movement for independence. The independence movement was going on, and the others, the seminaries, seem to be immune to this movement and agitation in Indian society. No doubt, Monsignor Mathias was the brain and the motor behind the development of the SHS, and that the SHS evolved very much under the Italian SDB rectors till 65, but only their voices are present in the dissertation. Nothing about the voices of the teaching staff or of the seminarians. I've already mentioned this. For many years, and even after the independence, the Diocese of Madras recruited vocations only from Kerala for reasons you have explained. Why, for many years, vocations from Kerala, for Tamil Nadu Diocese? The reason given is that there were no vocations, or rather, the Christians were very poor, and therefore, there were no vocations. I do not see, the reason does not seem plausible. Further, I do not see caste issues at play in the seminary or in the mind of Monsignor Mathias when caste consciousness was then so pronounced in the Tamil society. There is nothing about what Mathias or the pre-Italian SDB, rectors for the Seminarians taught about the independence movement. Was the article accepted that all celebrated the Independence Day with a Holy Mass. Matthias was aware of the freedom struggle as mentioned in 3 pages in the dissertation, but independence does not seem to have much impact on the seminarian formation at the SHS. The thoughts of foreign missionaries are clearly stated. This is what the foreign SDB missionaries thought. In 1950s and even beyond, the foreign missionaries were as yet reluctant, this is from the thesis, about handing over the church's administration in India to Indian clergy. They felt that Indians were not yet ready and capable to assume the responsibilities of the church. This is rather strange. When Indians had assumed already the direction of the country, they were not ready to, the clergy, the Salesians thought that the Christians were not ready to assume the responsibility in the local church. The choice of Monsignor Matthias continued to be the Western missionaries. Monsignor Matthias also felt that the Indians were not ready to take up the leadership in the church. There is, and also the British Raj also thought the same thing. They not wanted to give independence to India because now the Indians are incapable of running the show, the country. So the churches, the Salesians are saying the same thing here. 10 years after the independence, or 15 perhaps. There is a post-colonial incident, anyway, I mentioned already about this case of a dissent voice, that is of Father Joseph, who criticized the appointment of foreigners. This is the only case, it appears in the dissertation that this is the only case of dissent.
Yes.
But maybe you found only that.
Mm-hmm.
There is the Catholic bishops, this is what you have written. I'm just coming to that. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of India, CBCI, had said that the Catholic Church is not directly concerned with political changes, and that her mission was primarily spiritual. Was it said by the CBCI?
Yes.
Or is
yes.
it?
So it's a direct quote, Father.
They were not concerned about political concerned with political change. Independence, no independence, it is, we are concerned about political, well, they would not have said today such things. Okay? You can...
yeah, I'll explain.
Context, but you are saying that it is the CBCI that said these words. Context. As I mentioned to you earlier, just to bring this to your mind, you say that the total Christian population of Madras numbered over 1 million, of which 62% belonged to the Church of Rome. So you think we Indians belong to the Church of Rome? We Catholic Indians belong to the Church of Rome?
Yeah.
Then they keep saying that you are foreigners, you think like foreigners.
Yeah, that's the
So
I'll answer.
So there is another term that we need to use, like, native, I mentioned to you earlier, don't want to repeat, and so on. It's like today, we cannot say, he's blacklist, black sheep, black spot, black mark, all these things. In today's context, all these terms are, because of its connotations, prejudices, or discrimination. It has to be, like for instance, indigenous. If I ask you, where is Archbishop Louis Matthias from? Where is he from?
He's from France.
And you say simply that he's from France. You don't say he's a native of France or he's an indigenous of France. You say no, because we say France and these natives, indigenous are always considered people as inferior, people to be civilized. That's why I said instead of saying indigenous vocations, Indian vocations, local vocations. You know, I'm talking about connotations. Another thing, conclude like this. Today, parts of the Americas and most of the European countries, which once sent missionaries to the subcontinent, to India, in turn get their priests from India. So when they went there, they were missionaries, and they went up. Now when we come here, we are priests. We are not missionaries. How come? You understand
Yes.
what I'm trying to say? Would you say that you are a missionary in Rome? What do you say? Are you a missionary or you are simply a priest?
I'm a priest.
Not a missionary. Okay. It's just to see how terms, change, and but it's not a question of terms, but we are doing the same thing. But see, the method this is the last. The method adopted by Monsignor Mathias is from your thesis. In narrating about his pastoral visit is based on the European Western experience. You remember this? The narration of Monsignor Mathias is, this is your words, the Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. So this needs some explaining. Because the idea, it seems that Mathias, he seemed to be more an archbishop of the seminary, SHS, rather than archbishop of the diocese. He wanted to control everything. He had to decide about everything. But this last phrase, I think, is pointing to that type of authoritarian. You see, when you present this thesis to the world, to the public, these are the questions that will be asked. And I'm just trying to prepare you,
Yes.
whoever reads it seriously, will ask you these questions and similar questions when you present papers, when you, okay, I think I will end here. I should not interrupt you. You may say whatever.
And I think that's good because we've just about run out of time, but we're going to give you as much time as you need to answer all of those questions, or choose the best ones, or whatever. You left me with a lot of questions.
So I like to not answer each and everything. There are many valid points that you have pointed out that I could improve on. Thank you very much. First of all, word of thanks. And coming to, let me start from the last observation that will be fresh in everybody's mind. The Western style of dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. So it is the definition that I found that has been given by Edward Said in the Orientalism, the book. So I had pointed out also in my presentation that their mission was good, they were loving, they were passionate about the land, they wanted to empower the people, bring up. But I had mentioned that their attitude was that of Orientalism. They had the superior mentality. I can say that with the following example that I have, that I cited in the 6th chapter of my work, the social oratory. The seminarians are given basic orientation and they are sent to the social oratories. They go to the nearby villages, as many as 13 or 15 in 3 or 4. About they spend 3 hours in the village, gather them near the temple or the church campus and teach them. And one of the letters of Father Valloja to Opera Santi Petri to ask for the subscription or the money that was needed to run the seminary. Then the report he mentions, all seminarians go to meet the pagan children. Who are these seminarians? They are one of them, one of the children. They have to be identified there. And I like to reflect on this. When he points out, our seminarians go to meet the pagan children, teach them good manners. In other words, civilize them. They carry with them the football, the volleyball, whatever it is, and attract them. And they tell them the moral stories, give the values of Christ. And so this one paragraph made me to reflect a lot, because I have gone to the oratories with the balls and conducted oratories. And I began to realize I was identifying myself with the missionaries that Baba also in his book cites. No? It is called mimicking the Western missionaries. You identify themselves with. They come with the attitude. Another book that I have also quoted, like the doctoral research of Father Roy Poonamallee done in Salesian University, the Salesian Missionary vision, he analyzes Juventud Missionaria, how these missionaries wanted to go to India, what was the fire in them to push them to leave the land for the good, take up the very dangerous sea voyage. They were not sure, and they were not told whether they can return for their holidays to meet their parents. No, I was very curious to know what made them. Now, if in a given situation it would be very difficult for me to leave my family, my parents, what made them? So, the attitude that was put in them through that magazine to critically look at, sitting in a post-colonial period where we have the freedom of reasoning, that has been put in their mind, you are superior. You are a Christian. You are baptized. You have light. So, go. Give them that light. Civilize them. Free them from their evil powers. That was the idea. These missionaries who worked in Nepal, Jamora and Maori and other missionaries who had come, they came with the idea of India. It was pagan, evil, dark, uncivilized. So with this idea they come. And what was that spiritual power that they had, the spiritual motive that they had? Give me souls, take away the rest. Salvation only in the church. So now we can question them and talk about them. Say them, you have done something wrong because the church's teaching has changed. So in spirit, salvation can be obtained anywhere. So it is easy to blame them for what they have done. Sitting in a period where we have the freedom of reason, where the church is more open to the opinions and ready to listen to the cry and challenge problems of the local church. But to understand them, yes, they were wrong according to us, to our present context. But in their context, they were given that type of orientation. Give me the souls, take away the rest. They knew you have to love the Pope, you have to have a greater devotion to Blessed Virgin Mary. In so much so, even today, in the seminary, Sacred Heart Seminary, even after so many years, the province has handed over the seminary to the diocese. Even the devotion to Mary, Help of Christians, that typical of Salesians, is being carried on. The oratories is carried on. So, this is the idea that the young people came. All they knew that they were in internment camps, going through philosophical and theological formation. They were ordained in the internment camps. Who taught them? Their senior priests. What they had learned. What did they learn? They come as young boys. Did they have enough books and library seminary set up? They will conduct origin, do this work, and evening 1 hour, 1 hour fast, morning the class. This was the system. What would have been the depth of these people? So, the only orientation that was, they have to give Christ to them. Relieve them from their evil path. So that was the idea that they were given. So coming to me, the reflection that I was having, these seminarians were imitating the Western missionaries. and going out and seeing their own kith and kin, their own blood, their own countrymen as someone inferior. So in how much? So this study becomes very relevant in that aspect. The seminary formation is continued even today in this pattern. Even when Octagon Proteus gives lots of freedom in number 1 to the local episcopal conferences to adapt, take the spirit, and then give the formation to the seminarians. How much this has been done is a question. They are doing, 2016, the last year that had come out, that insists on human, spiritual, intellectual, pastoral formation, that I had interpreted the formation that was given by Monsignor Mathias has been already anticipated in the pre-Vatican period. But how much has been actualized, lived? So there comes the real reflection. There comes the relevance of this study. So this study is not mainly to glorify the Western missionaries, no. As this last line itself says that they had this mentality. It was their context. To add support to this, okay, when they were for independence, did they join the people for the freedom movement? No. The mere entry into India was assured to them if only they don't disturb the commercial interests of the British. So even there was a German, a British or English or a Spaniard in the community, they were not allowed. There were letters, interesting letters, but I am not quoted, but that would be useful for my future studies. Monsignor Mathias, as a leader of Salesian delegation in India, writes, do not talk politics in the time of Second World War. So they had this mere existential problem. Of course, we can say, they should have been brave enough, they should have given life, they should have come back. So we can judge them, from our context. But that was the context that they were living in. So they had to obey the superiors. And coming to this, I had also written what was the idea of this freedom movement of the missionaries, including Monsignor Mathias. They had to vacate the seminary campus and give it to the soldiers or record office of Madras Presidency, the seminary, and move to the holiday villa. Monsignor Mathias writes in New Leader, so that had been given by the apostolic delegate. This British is working against the Nazi movement, which is doing a lot of evil, the Germans. So in as much as we participate in their struggle and support them in their war, we are supporting or promoting the values of Christ. And the British also were promising, if only you help us in the Second World War, soon we will give you the freedom and we'll leave you independently. So these are all the various reasons that these missionaries received, basing on the existential problems, the affirmation that had been given by the British to India to cooperate with them and help them in the war. So they leave the seminary and they go and struggle 6 long years in their holiday villa and they come back. So we can't say them they were completely against, in as much as a bishop, it would have been easy for him and he would have been imprisoned or he would have been sent back as per the norms that were existing at that time, back to Europe. But the responsibility that was given, the instruction that was given, at the same time there was a heart that the values of Christ that he wanted to give to the people. So he did his maximum. So in many ways, to conclude, many of your points are valid, and I've tried to objectively, critically, and interpret them in this thesis. I've done my best. So these are the few things that come to my mind to answer you, Father. Thank you.
I think we're at a point where we've heard quite a bit. Thank you very much for your response and good time. And now what we'll do is take a moment to make a judgment of the defense, and then we'll come back and leave the last word to you.
I have the privilege of making the legal or canonical declaration, and since I only facultas historiae ac honorum culturalium ecclesiae, ma pure considerata dissertazione a parte Dominic Hendry Selvaraj, segulo elaborata e odie coram nobis optime exposita ac defensa, extistimat et decernit eum post eustem dissertationes vel eius partis publicationem esse idioneum et inium recipiendi titulum et diploma doctoris in historia ecclesiae. And now we leave the last words to our new doctor.
Come di consueto alla fine della presentazione e discussione pubblica della mia tesi di dottorato, vorrei rivolgere una parola di ringraziamento a tutte le persone presenti e assenti che mi hanno sostenuto lungo questo percorso di studio e reso possibile il compiersi di questo giorno molto importante per me. Ve lo devo confessare, non avrei mai parole giuste, sufficienti e adatte per tradurre il mio profondo sentimento di gratitudine. Ringrazio il Signore nostro Dio per il dono della vita, per le sue molteplici grazie, ma soprattutto per i doni della salute fisica e intellettuale, psicologica con i quali ho iniziato e portato a termine gli studi e questa tesi di dottorato presso la Pontificia Università Gregoriana. Vorrei ringraziare tutta la famiglia salesiana, in modo particolare il Rettor Maggiore, Don Angelo Fernandez Attini e i suoi consiglieri. Uno speciale ringraziamento a Don Alfred Maraviglia, consigliere generale per le missioni, Don Biggio Michael, consigliere regionale per Asia Sud, per la loro presenza tra noi. Vorrei ringraziare l'ispettore di Chennai, ispettoria della mia origine, Don Kean Jos e tutti i confratelli, Don Eugenio Priva, visitatore della visitatoria, Santa Maria, sede della Sapienza e tutti i confratelli. Sono molto grato alla comunità salesiana del Testaccio, che è stata la mia casa in questi anni del mio studio alla Gregoriana. Sono grato a Don Giorgio Zedini e tutti i confratelli per il loro sostegno e aiuto fratello nel compiere bene il mio studio. Con grande emozione vorrei ringraziare la mia famiglia di origine e parenti per il sostegno e la vicinanza. Penso in particolare ai miei genitori che sono tornati alla casa del Padre e che indubbiamente mi sorridono dal cielo. Non posso passare sotto silenzio e non ringraziare il contributo e il sostegno innominabili dei miei numerosi amici e conoscenti, singole persone e famiglie. Ringrazio tutti voi che avete voluto essere presenti a questa presentazione e discussione pubblica della mia tesi per sostenermi, per congratularmi di persona. Vorrei ringraziare in modo speciale Don Jayapal Rafai, ex ispettore ispettoria di Chennai, Don Francesco Motto, ex direttore di Istituto Storico Salesiano, anche Don Thomas, un ex ispettore di Bengaluru e direttore attuale dell'Istituto Storico, doveva essere qua, però per il motivo di salute non c'era con noi. Anche ringrazio lui per tutti e due, anche per la loro presenza oggi tra noi e il loro accompagnamento. Infine, e l'ho fatto di proposito, vorrei ringraziare il corpo accademico scientifico della Pontificia Università Gregoriana di Roma ed in particolare le autorità e i docenti della Facoltà di Storia e Beni Culturali della Chiesa. Si è ringraziato il decano di questa facoltà, professor Inglot Marek, il presidente della giuria, il professor Mark Lewis, il professor Elio Mendonza, il censore della mia tesi per i suoi contributi critici di alta fattura. Non ho parole per ringraziare il professor Filippo Lovison il maturatore della mia tesi per tutto quello che è stato fatto per me durante questi anni alla Gregoriana e in modo speciale per il percorso di concettualizzazione, di impostazione, di ricerca e redazione di questa tesi. Rimarrà per me un maestro, una guida ed un fratello. Grazie a tutti. Ciao. Vorrei presentare un mantello, no? Una tradizione indiana a loro, però voi potete indossarsi da soli.